There are some moments in football where time seems to slow down. We all get up from our seats, and for a second, nothing else matters except what's happening on the field. Where it was a world record transfer that never happened, a goal that went in, or even a managerial decision, these 10 moments that I'm about to show you shape the entire issue of the sport. So strap your seatbelts because you're going on an adventure to an alternate universe where football as you know it doesn't exist. Starting out with Barcelona appointing Mourinho instead of Guardiola. Back in 2008, Barcelona were looking for a new coach after losing the La Liga title for 2 consecutive seasons. At that time, Jose Mourinho, fresh from a sabbatical year following his Chelsea tenure, emerged as the prime candidate. His previous role as an assistant manager at Barcelona and his reputation as one of the best coaches of that era made him an enticing choice. Yet, there was a twist in this tale. Johan Cruyff, the influential figure synonymous with Barcelona's total football, held a different view when he urged the club's president to take a gamble on Pep Guardiola, then coaching the youth team, believing his approach aligned better with the club's philosophy. If Mourinho had signed a deal with Barcelona, it could have rewritten football history. Barcelona's style might have shifted to a more defensive focus, potentially altering the trajectory of talents like Lionel Messi, who blossomed under Guardiola's guidance. Additionally, the mesmerizing tiki-taka style that defines Spain's international dominance may not have materialized in the same manner, which leads me to the next alternate scenario. Italy wins a penalty shootout against Spain in Euro 2008. Euro 2008 was a turning point in world football as it marked the beginning of one of the most dominating periods by any national team in history. But what if Spain had lost that penalty shootout in the semi-finals? Italy were the current World Cup winners and had played better during the entire match. Had they won the game, they would be clear favourites ahead of Germany to win the Euros. But here's the twist. If Italy takes the crown, you might see players like Cristiano Ronaldo opting for Italian clubs instead of moving to Spain. That shift could have given Serie A whole new lease of life. Meanwhile, Spain would have been stuck in a trophy drought and might have ditched their signature tiki-taka style. They'd still be a decent national team, just not the ones all in the big trophies. So yeah, it's wild how one shootout in Euro 2008 could have flipped the football world upside down. Next up, I got another bad scenario for my Iberian brothers. What if Casillas didn't save that Robben shot? In the 62nd minute, Robben had in his foot a chance to break years of bad luck and finally win the coveted World Cup. But instead, Casillas emerged as an impenetrable wall and denied Robben and his Dutch people their dream. But what if that ball went in? Well, the Netherlands would most likely win the match, since Spain's game plan at the time wasn't effective if the focus was to come back from a disadvantage. But here's the twist, even with that triumph, I'd say Robben wouldn't quite reach the same level as Messi and Ronaldo. Let's not forget that the World Cup win wouldn't magically make him less injury prone. Still, it wouldn't be too surprising if he won the Ballon d'Or that year. Furthermore, players like Sneijder, Van Persie and Kout would go down in history as absolute legends. On the other hand, Xavi, Iniesta and Casillas might not be hailed as the GOATs in their respective positions. Our next scenario takes us back to 1990, in a world where Man United didn't win that year's FA Cup. Back then, Sir Alex Ferguson had been coaching the club since 1986 with little to no success. The Red Devils were hovering above the relegation zone and his work on the club was under massive scrutiny by both the media and fans. His strategy of relying on young talents wasn't exactly paying off, and Man United found themselves as the underdogs in most of their FA Cup matches. But despite the odds, they pulled off narrow wins, ultimately securing victory in the final against Crystal Palace thanks to a goal from youth team graduate Lee Martin. Now imagine a world where this win didn't happen. Manchester United wouldn't have qualified for the following year's Cup Winners' Cup, let alone win it. More importantly, Sir Alex Ferguson might have been shown the door. And without Ferguson's influence, the club might have never evolved into the powerhouse we witnessed in the 2000s. The Premier League landscape itself would look completely different. In the best case scenario, Manchester United could be on par with teams like Tottenham. In the worst case scenario, they might have plummeted into the Championship, joining the ranks of fallen giants from the past. Continuing on the city of Manchester, I have another interesting scenario. What if Messi left Barca for Manchester City in 2020? After a crushing defeat against Bayern in the Champions League, Messi decided he had enough at the Camp Nou. He formally asked for a transfer, but due to some timing constraints, the club denied his request. Messi eventually settled, but by the end of the 2020-21 season, he left, not because he wanted to, but because the club simply couldn't afford to keep him. At that point, Manchester City had already splurged £100 million on Grealish, closing the door on a potential Messi move. So PSG became the only logical option, but the next 2 seasons at the Parc des Princes were a letdown, with Messi failing to recapture the elusive Champions League title. Now here's where the alternate path comes into play. Imagine Messi managed to make the move to Man City in 2020. The treble dream might have been realized sooner, as he would have fit in perfectly into Guardiola's system at the time. Fast forward the year and we'd have both Messi and Ronaldo squaring off in the Manchester derby. Their intense rivalry could have breathed new life into their careers, possibly extending their brilliance even further than what we've seen. Now let's travel back in time to 2014 in a universe where Gerrard didn't sleep. At that point, Stevie G had seen it all, the best of the best and the worst of the worst. Unfortunately, his slip against Chelsea was an unforgettable moment and became a little bit of a blemish in his impressive career. But what if it didn't happen? Well, for starters, Liverpool would have won the league, and as a consequence, Brendan Rodgers would be among the managerial elite nowadays as the one who gifted the Reds their first ever Premier League title. Liverpool would have kept Sterling in their books, but we would never have witnessed the emergence of Klopp or the iconic trio of Salah, Firmino and Mane. On the flip side, Gerrard's farewell to Liverpool would have been perfect, lifting the missing piece in his trophy collection. His name would be etched even more deeply into football lore, celebrated far beyond its current status. But I'm not done altering Liverpool's reality. I want to explore another important moment. What if Michael Owen never left for Real Madrid? It's a bit weird for the new generation of football fans to believe that this guy who states the most basic and boring tactical observations was once a Ballon d'Or winner. But he was in fact a pretty good and talented striker, and it was no surprise when Real Madrid in their Galacticos era came calling for him. Following that move, his career never really matched the heights he set as a youngster, as he never took on a starting role in the Santiago Bernabeu. And while his tenure with Newcastle diminished his reputation at the eyes of the average football fan, his controversial move to Manchester United completely destroyed his reputation as a Liverpool legend. But what if he stayed? Should everything remain the same, he would win the Champions League with his beloved club, but I don't think his presence in Liverpool would affect the Premier League too much. Chelsea were pretty strong under Mourinho, and Sir Alex Ferguson's United was still superior to Liverpool. Either way, he would go down as a club legend and not just a commentator who doesn't know what to say on TV. Now let me take you back in time to 1949, where the entire Torino squad lost their lives in an airplane crash. Back then, Torino was one of the best teams in the world. They dominated Italian football and were the core of the Italian national team. But then came that fateful crash. If that tragic event hadn't unfolded, Valentino Mazzola's name might be echoing through football history much more loudly. He could have been held in the same regard as legends like Cruyff or Maradona had he won more silverware. Without that crash, Italy would likely have been unstoppable, strong contenders for the 1950 World Cup and potentially amassing more than just 4 titles by now. On the club front, Torino's trajectory would have likely continued upwards. Who knows, they might have even snagged one of the inaugural European Cup editions. It stands down the most heart-wrenching moment in this entire video. Every football fan wishes it could be erased from history. The lost potential, the shattered dreams, it's a tragedy that still lives today, especially in the hearts of all Torino fans. Next up, what if Ronaldo never suffered any injuries? In the 90s, there was no player like Ronaldo. Despite his young age, he made a fool out of every defender and scored outstanding numbers for a teenager, to this date only surpassed by Pelé. But as time went on, the cruel twist of knee injuries derailed his meteoric rise, preventing him from reliving those glorious days. In an alternate reality where injuries didn't haunt him, he would have likely dominated the early to mid-2000s, much like Ronaldo and Messi did in the subsequent decade. Real Madrid wouldn't have suffered through a 12-year Champions League drought, and when Cristiano eventually joined Los Merengues, the shoes he had to fill would have been even bigger. Yet, even in this scenario, I reckon Cristiano would have still risen to challenge him. Injuries aside, the Brazilian star's lifestyle and weight concerns would have affected his style of play, especially as he aged. In the end, he would likely rank above the likes of Zidane and Ronaldinho, but fall short of the trio of Messi, Cristiano and his compatriot Pelé. And speaking of Cristiano, we got our final alternate scenario in this video. The single question every Ronaldo fan asks before they fall asleep crying into their Al Nassr pillow. What if Cristiano never left Real Madrid? To start, those painful 3 seasons without a Champions League title, they wouldn't exist. While Liverpool might have still snatched a 2019 trophy, Real would have rebounded soon after, clinching either the 2020 or 2021 editions. Secondly, Benzema wouldn't have had the opportunity to lead the squad and win the Ballon d'Or. As Ronaldo aged and fully transitioned into a striker, Benzema would probably be the one to leave. On a more positive note, Bale would have been the one to leave in 2018, and he would gain back his confidence and love for football in the Premier League. while at the same time, Hazard wouldn't have become the joke that he is nowadays and would continue to be world-class for a couple more seasons, perhaps leading Chelsea to stability or even leaving for a team like Manchester City. In any scenario, I don't see Ronaldo still rocking the Real Madrid iconic white shirt today. Real's culture is ruthlessly competitive, and even though Cristiano secured his status as their greatest ever player, he likely would have moved on by now, perhaps around the same time he departed from Juve. But what do you think? If Cristiano stayed, would Real be better or worse nowadays? Let me know your opinion in the comments and let's have a discussion. Leave a like so I know you want to watch more content like this, and don't forget to subscribe to Torino FC so you never miss the most interesting football discussions, stories and news. Thanks for watching until the end, I appreciate you and I will see you soon.